hope you're having a wonderful day. I wanted to speak a little bit more about the mother, the goddess, because she's the first substance, most vital to the beginning of understanding, because you have to start somewhere, and without the first substance, then you don't have anywhere you can go in that direction. She is, every culture in the world has some name for the mother, and she's called the mother of all things. She's called the source of life, the wisdom, Sophia. She is the Egyptians, Isis, and she's given 3 forms because this substance has 3 different forms. In the first stage, the first form, and every aspect of the work is a union of male and female, repeatedly, over and over and over again. So the first substance is once again a union of the male and the female. And it results in the maiden. And the maiden is given a white dress. And how that's significant when you're talking about a chemical process is by the introduction of the seed into the feminine substance. When it has reached its maximum saturation, it'll turn white. And that's how the maiden got her name, because she's the virgin. She hasn't been tainted by anything yet. She's just the pure substance as it begins. And so this seed in allegory is represented by a marriage, essentially. And so the seed has to come from the all source, the source of things, the father source, the male. And so it's in Egyptian hieroglyphs, it's represented by the sun. And this spiritual essence that's represented by the sun is found deep in the earth. And it's the common element that you find in this process. If you go to a volcano and you stand on the edge of the cauldron or anywhere near it, in the mud pools, I don't know if you've ever been to go see Old Faithful, all the mud pits surrounding, there's one common thing to anywhere you go in a volcano, and that's, you'll notice what that thing is by the smell. And so when the seed is introduced into the virgin, the maiden, then you have the doves of Diana. And the allegory is, if you see the allegory of the woman with red hair, she's usually in a green shirt or dress, with sometimes a violet cloak. She's usually holding the Holy Grail, but she always has doves. Always has doves surrounding her, and sometimes dogs too. But the doves are the first, they are the white. And so this in the allegories, they usually use a form that resembles the actual substance itself as their allegory. And so this substance has two parts that are volatile and one part that is earth. And so they give the substance wings. It's a dove, because doves have feet and they have wings, so it's both volatile and earthy substance. But the combination of the two give birth to the maiden. The maiden alone can't do anything. She not in the beginning. It's necessary for the maiden to become the mother for any work to begin. And as in real life, the mother always gives a part of herself to her child, to her daughter. She imparts a part of her own soul, a part of her own being into her daughter. And that's just the nature of a mother. They want to give of themselves to further their daughter's life, and to improve it in every way possible. And so the second step is you mix the two substances, the mother and the maiden. And this, in allegory, is you have Isis and Ceres, and they each have their own unique qualities, with Isis being the mother and Ceres being the maiden. And then you have Cabelli, which is the next stage. But in order to create the mother has to first be the maiden, and then the mother has to be wed. So in order for the maiden to be born, there has to be a wedding. There has to be a union of male and female. And then for the maiden to become the mother, there again has to be another union. And you find this threefold allegory of the mother everywhere. Everywhere. You have, and it's, for a woman in life, it's the three stages of youth, and then maturity, and then finally you become an old person. And so the natural stages of life, this is the template that these stages follow. And so in the work, you follow the same stages. The mother is, like, for anything that has form to have been born, the mother is necessary. But she, in her own power, is too strong, too powerful. She'll overcome some things. And so there's a union again. Her first child, essentially. And that child, in most of the alchemical allegory, is referred to as the ram, because this substance is, in essence, like the mother, but is the result of a change in her potency. The how do you explain this without giving it all away? That's the challenge of all these writers. They'll talk around something and around it and around it and around it and never actually mention the thing. But then they'll later mention it in quoting someone else, because that's okay. It's not okay for you to tell, but it's okay to tell a story about somebody and include that ingredient in the story. And so this particular part of the work is left out of the vast majority, the vast majority of writers just leave the mother out entirely, because without that you can't do anything. It's just impossible. It's never gonna happen. And so it's the fire. It's the first union to create the maiden, the initial step in the process, requires this fire of earth. And this earthy fire is the male principle. It's the solar principle. And so it was given a place of high authority in Egyptian culture, represented by the sun. Because the sun not only reflects its intensity and power and burning qualities, but its color as well. And the feminine is the opposite of that. The feminine is the source of life on earth. Without this substance, everything would just become desert. And during the union, there always has to be some heat. There's never a conjunction of things where the two are bound into one without trials. And the trials are, what they say, it's the cross, and the cross is the crucible. And so that's the Athenor, the flame, the external flame. And the external flame acts upon the intrinsic flame and allows these two substances to come together. And their union, like when you reach the mortification of the substance, then this mortification, as opposed to all the others, results in white instead of black. And the maiden is born. Once the maiden is born, you add one-fifth portion of the mother into the maiden. And so the mother gives of herself. She donates a part of herself into the transformation of the maiden into the mother. And so this is symbolic of, on the wedding day, the mother she prepares with the maiden the transference of this protection, this covering, and in doing so, she's moving the maiden forward in her timeline in life into a new stage of growth and development, and knowing, because she's been there before, knowing what she will need to survive all that, she takes a part of herself and gives it to her daughter. And then the maiden becomes the mother. The crone doesn't come till long after. You spend the most time with the mother. And so it's not necessary to go into that yet, but the crone is a combination of the maiden and the mother, but it's a union. it's represented by that bond between a mother and daughter that comes later in life when the daughter has had some kids, had some life experience, and she now can relate to the mother in a new way. And this creates a new bond between mother and daughter. And this bond continues on through age for both of them. And eventually the mother will die. But this bond is created after the maiden becomes the mother, and the mother has stepped fully into herself and who she is. She's had children, and then she comes back to the mother, her own mother, again for wisdom and guidance. And so this new union, the Egyptians were called Kabeli, and that was the third face of Isis. She had three faces on a single body and a single head, whereas other embodiments of different conjunctions show a replacement of heads or multiple heads. These three faces on one head indicate that this substance stems from one thing. It's not a combination in the same sense as the other conjunctions. The discovery of the sperm of the gods, this substance embodied by the sun, is the quest for the golden fleece, because it's with this one element that all the work is accomplished. It's the first substance necessary to accomplish anything. And it's a substance that, depending on where you live in the world, you're probably going to have, like in the old days anyways, you would have had to travel to acquire it. And so the quest for the golden fleece is the quest for the first substance. And so I would recommend listening to all those, any storyline that embodies the work. And if you're looking for the first substance, you should start with storylines that focus on that particular substance. The story itself will embody the whole of the work. But because the golden fleece is not only the first substance, it's the final substance, and because it's built from that, and the authors would never tell you outright what something is by its actual name. Instead, they would usually call it by the name of the substance from which the thing is born. And so it was really easy to boil down the work and say, well, how do you make the stone? Well, I make the stone from salt, sulfur, and mercury. And then they scratch their heads and they're like, well, how do I put salt, sulfur, and mercury together to create that thing, right? And all of these substances are merely the raw forms of the natures which are derived from the thing to create the element needed for the work. And so if you just try putting salt and sulfur and mercury together, you won't have any success. The mother is the key to everything. Once you understand the mother, then you understand the direction the process is taking. Because every chemical process is based in something. It starts with a main substance, and then everything else happens with, to, or around by that substance. And so this particular work is all rooted around one particular substance, and that substance is represented by the sun, because it's the thing it's like the sperm of the gods that's inside everything. And but there's different seeds, there's different sperms for different things, and so as you move forward, that's why they switched things to being instead of being called seed later, it's called milk. Well, I don't know if that's any help to you guys, but the journey to discover the mother is the first path that you have to take, and she is literally found everywhere. As far as in storylines, there's not a culture in the world that doesn't depict this in some way. And I really like the Egyptian allegories, because you can go today into the Egyptian tombs and see these allegories written out, and if you understand what they mean, they're actually telling you this process written on the walls, but it's in picture story form. And so people always take the allegories literally, and they think, well, there's a story of these two guys, Isis and Horus, right? But in reality, they're talking about a chemical wedding, and Isis, being the mother, gives the milk, and there's two different kinds of milk, and there's also two different kinds of seed. It's a balance back and forth, but from beginning to end, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. You take the fire essence and its opposite, and you unite them together in perfect harmony, so fire and water can coexist together as one. And then you continue to join male and female together over and over and over again. From this fire water substance, it's like a viscous, oily substance. Then you get the ram. And then with the ram, you have the union of the ram and the man. And so then you have your first stone. The work up to that point is all solution. Well, with the exception of the seed of the gods, that substance is a dry, powdery substance that takes on the color of the sun. And then once it's joined to the wet, then you stay in solution until the man and the ram are born. And so it's a balance back and forth of you make the female and the male aspects, and then you put them together, and then you make female and male aspects, and then you put them together. And these unions often result with allegories where it's gone from neither being male or female to being hermaphroditic or not having any sex at all. And those stages, those are different stages in the work. And so just like every cell starts out as a stem cell, and a stem cell has the ability to become any other cell. It's the core structure of every cell, and every other cell after it is merely an augmentation of that one first cell. And that's what you're doing here. You start by taking a male and a female, and you put them together And then you again put the male and female together. And then again put the male and the female together. Then you've built one side of the work, and then you take the mother, and from which the twins are born, from the family of the red lion. And these twins, their colors are red and gold. And so that indicates that this substance is a twofold substance. And both of the substance that are used to build this new substance, the process used to make them is identical for both. And so they're called the mirror. And the earliest mention of the mirror that I've found is Solomon. He calls wisdom. And wisdom in the Greek was Sophia. He calls Sophia the mirror. And Sophia is the virgin goddess. The same as the Egyptian Ceres. Wisdom, that's wisdom, in this substance is represented by an owl. The behavior of this substance and the way it works, the way it multiplies, the way it's propagated, is a reflection of how all of the work happens. It is by working with this substance and learning how it behaves, how to make the mother, the maiden, and the crone, and their distinct attributes, teaches you the processes that you're going to be using in the work, because the work that you're going to be doing will be happening in these solutions. And while you're working with your substance in the solution, you have to change between one solution and another. And so that requires an understanding of the three substances, how each one is born, and the methods necessary for one to become the other. Because you're practicing without your delicate work inside to do the work itself. You're just doing you're doing it without any expensive ingredients in there for you to mess up. And so the first real challenge of the work is to become acquainted with the mirror, the mother. And wisdom is her name. She's surrounded by doves and has an owl on her shoulder in a lot of situations. She's the perfect union of fire and water. And her symbol is most oftentimes a 5-pointed star. And the way that the star is made is you have first a triangle at the bottom like this, and it's smaller and a little flatter like that. And that triangle is the fire. It's pointed upward, okay? And then you have another triangle that intersects with that going down. And that triangle is like more like this. And it represents the female aspect, the wet, the moisture, and it's bigger at a ratio of 2-to-1. So this substance is a union of two opposing substances, fire and water. And then when you have created the substance in its fullness, in its maximum concentration, then the star, the scales, there's only one set of scales in all of the alchemical texts, and that scale is resting at a ratio of 2 to 1. So you have to first make the mother in her fullness, and then you have to create a secondary substance called the ram. And that substance, the pinnacle, is the recipe for the mixture used to create the ram. And so when you look at the 5-pointed star with the longer V on top and the shorter triangle at the bottom, what you're actually seeing is a recipe for 1 part fire and 2 parts water, with a final ratio of 1 to 2 fire to water. And then you have the ram, and from the ram you can take the next hieroglyph, which is the hieroglyph of the man and the ram, right? And then their union results in Pan, the first solid matter built with the art. And that one is also referred to as the mirror, because this matter is more like a salt, and it can be every color of the rainbow. And in discovering this salt of the sages, there's the hieroglyph in Mystery of the Cathedrals. There's a fountain out in front, and this fountain, there's an angel standing in the middle of the fountain, and the plate at the bottom of the fountain says, if the fountain fails, the goddess has, by degrees, made the everlasting waters. And so this stone is made by degrees. And your goal is for it to be a dry water. And the color of water in alchemy is blue. And so if the stone is any other color, then it's by degrees that the fountain will produce the everlasting waters. Well, I think I've rambled on enough for the moment. I wanted to share a little bit more about the mother. She is so vital to understanding anything else that if you don't start there, then the chances of success are significantly lesser. May you be blessed in what you do, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.